For 15 years, my parents introduced me as the family disappointment. Whenever relatives asked what I did for a living, my father would laugh and say, "Nothing important." My mother treated me like a burden she couldn't wait to get rid of. Eventually, I stopped defending myself. Let them believe I was a failure. It was safer that way. Then one rainy Tuesday evening, a birthday card from my grandmother arrived. At first, it looked completely normal, but hidden inside was a coded message only I could understand. 30 minutes later, I was racing toward my parents' house, and everything changed forever. My name is Emma Carter, and I was 33 years old when a simple birthday card changed everything. For 15 years, my parents had treated me like the family disappointment. At every holiday dinner, every birthday party, every family gathering, I could practically predict what would happen. Someone would ask what I was doing with my life. My father would sigh dramatically. My mother would shake her head. Then one of them would say something like, "Emma still hasn't figured things out." The room would fill with awkward smiles. My younger brother, Tyler, would usually smirk from across the table. Tyler was the golden child. According to my parents, he could do no wrong. When he switched careers 3 times in 4 years, they called him ambitious. When he maxed out 2 credit cards, they called him unlucky. When he moved back into their house at 31, they said he was rebuilding. But somehow, everything I did was proof that I had failed. After a while, I stopped arguing. It was easier. The truth was, none of them actually knew what I did for a living, and I intended to keep it that way. The less people knew about my work, the safer everyone stayed. That was one of the first lessons I had learned. So whenever relatives asked questions, I simply smiled and changed the subject. My parents assumed my silence meant embarrassment. They never considered another possibility. Grandma did. My grandmother, Evelyn Carter, was the only person in the family who never judged me. She never asked why I missed holidays. She never questioned my strange travel schedule. She never demanded explanations. Instead, she would simply squeeze my hand and say, "You're exactly where you need to be." Grandma understood something nobody else did. Sometimes silence wasn't weakness. Sometimes silence was responsibility. When I was 16, Grandma taught me something unusual. It happened during a summer storm. The power had gone out, and we were sitting on her porch listening to the rain. She handed me an old notebook filled with symbols, patterns, and phrases. At first, I thought it was a game. Then she explained. "Our family used coded messages during difficult times," she said. I laughed. "Like spies?" She smiled. "Something like that." For weeks, she taught me how to recognize hidden meanings buried inside ordinary letters and cards. Most people would never notice them. That was the point. Before I left for college, she made me promise something. "If I ever send you a specific code," she said, her expression unusually serious, "you come immediately." I nodded. Even if it makes no sense? Especially then. Over the years, we never needed it. Not once. Until my 33rd birthday. The day started exactly the way I expected. My mother forgot to call. My father sent a text message 6 hours late. Tyler posted pictures online celebrating a promotion he hadn't actually earned yet. Nothing unusual. I spent the day working from home and ignored most of the family messages. Around 5 in the evening, there was a knock on my door. A delivery driver handed me a small envelope. The return address made me smile.
"Grandma."
I carried it inside and sat at the kitchen table. The card looked ordinary enough. A simple birthday card with flowers on the front. Inside was a short handwritten message. "Happy birthday, Emma. Thinking of you today. The garden looks beautiful. The birds returned earlier than expected. Love always."
"Grandma."
At first glance, it was completely normal. Then my stomach tightened. I read it again. And again. The code was there. Hidden perfectly. The sentence structure. The word placement. The exact phrase she had taught me to watch for years ago. The birds returned earlier than expected. My pulse instantly accelerated.
No. No, no, no.
Grandma had promised she would only use that phrase under one condition. One condition. When she was unable to ask for help directly. I grabbed the notebook she had given me years earlier. The same worn notebook I had kept all this time. My hands moved faster as I flipped through the pages. There it was. The phrase. Exactly where I remembered. I felt the blood drain from my face. The meaning was unmistakable. Grandma believed she was in danger. And she believed someone close to her was involved. For a long moment, I simply stared at the card. Then I stood up. The family failure my parents loved to mock disappeared. The person they never bothered to understand took over. I grabbed my keys, my phone, the notebook, and headed for the door. Because 15 years ago, I had made a promise. And now Grandma was calling it in. The second I got into my car, I called Grandma, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. That alone was enough to make my anxiety spike. Grandma always answered. Even if she couldn't talk, she'd answer and tell me she'd call back later. I called a third time. Nothing. I pulled into a quiet parking lot and opened the notebook again. Years ago, Grandma had created layers within the code system. The first code identified danger. The second identified the source. The third explained urgency. Most people would have seen a harmless birthday greeting. I saw a warning. The garden looks beautiful. The birds returned earlier than expected. Those two phrases together pointed toward someone inside the family. Someone she trusted. Someone close. My stomach tightened. That narrowed the list considerably. I immediately called the only person besides Grandma who knew pieces of the code system. Margaret Collins, Grandma's longtime attorney. Margaret answered on the second ring. Emma? Her voice sounded surprised. Margaret, when was the last time you spoke with Grandma? A pause. Yesterday morning. Did she seem worried? Another pause. Why are you asking? I glanced at the birthday card beside me. Because she sent the distress code. Silence. Complete silence. When Margaret finally spoke, her voice had changed. Where are you? Downtown. I need you to come to my office. That response told me everything. Margaret knew something. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from her desk. She looked exhausted. Files were spread across her office. Several were labeled with Grandma's name. I immediately noticed that. Margaret followed my gaze. Then she sighed. I was hoping I was overreacting. My heart sank. What happened? She folded her hands. For the last 6 months, your grandmother has been trying to make changes to her estate. I frowned. So, someone keeps interfering. My pulse quickened. What kind of interference? Pressure. Margaret's expression hardened. Constant pressure. She opened one of the folders. Inside were copies of legal documents, notes, meeting records, correspondence. Your grandmother has repeatedly expressed concerns about family members trying to control her financial decisions. I stared at her. Family members? Margaret nodded slowly. I can't discuss everything yet. The answer itself was revealing. If she couldn't discuss it, something serious was happening. Is she safe? I asked. Margaret hesitated. That hesitation terrified me. I don't know. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she slid a document across the desk. I recognized my parents' names immediately. My chest tightened. The document showed multiple requests regarding property transfers, account access, and estate modifications. Nothing illegal. At least not yet. But the pattern was troubling. Very troubling. Why didn't Grandma tell me? Margaret gave me a sad smile. She didn't want to create a family war. That sounded exactly like Grandma. Protecting everyone except herself. What do we do now? Margaret leaned back. First, we verify everything. I nodded. Good. Evidence first. Assumptions later. That had always been my approach. Over the next several hours, we started assembling information. Phone records. Financial requests. Property documents. Witness statements. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sensational. Just facts. Piece by piece, a picture began forming. And I didn't like what I saw. Grandma had become increasingly isolated during the past year. Visits were monitored. Conversations interrupted. Decisions questioned. Every attempt she made to maintain independence seemed to trigger resistance from someone. Meanwhile, my parents continued treating me exactly as they always had. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A family group message. Tyler had posted another photo. This time he was standing in Grandma's house, smiling, holding papers. My father responded with celebration emojis. My mother wrote, "Finally getting things organized." Something about that message bothered me. A lot. Margaret noticed my expression. "What is it?" I handed her my phone. She stared at the picture, then immediately enlarged it. Her eyes narrowed. "Interesting."
What?
She pointed toward a corner of the image. Partially visible on a table behind Tyler was a familiar notebook. Grandma's notebook. Not mine. The original. The one she never let out of her possession. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Tyler had no reason to be anywhere near it.
None.
10 minutes later, another message arrived. This time from Grandma. Or, at least it appeared to be, "Everything's fine, sweetheart."
Don't worry about me.
The wording was wrong. Completely wrong. Grandma never called me sweetheart. Never. She called me Em. Always. I immediately looked at Margaret. She had noticed it too. That wasn't written by her.
No.
We sat in silence. The room suddenly felt smaller, heavier. Then my phone vibrated again. A new image arrived. No message. Just a photograph. Grandma sitting in her living room, smiling, holding a newspaper. Most people would have seen reassurance. I saw another code. The newspaper was folded in a specific way. One she had taught me years ago. Emergency. Immediate action required. My pulse exploded. Margaret. She was already reaching for her phone. I know. Within minutes, calls were being made. Information was shared. Procedures were initiated. Everything moved faster than I expected. 40 minutes later, I pulled into the street where my parents lived. The house looked peaceful, normal, like nothing was wrong. But appearances had fooled me before. A black vehicle was parked near the curb, then another. As I stepped out of my car, 2 uniformed officers exited one of the vehicles. One of them approached me calmly. "Emma Carter?" "Yes." He nodded, then glanced toward my parents' house. "We've reviewed the information." My heartbeat thundered inside my chest. The officer adjusted his jacket and looked directly at me. "Are you ready?" I looked at the officer and nodded. "Yes." For a brief moment, nobody moved. The quiet suburban street looked exactly the same as it always had. The same trimmed lawns. The same parked cars. The same house where I had spent most of my childhood feeling unwanted. But this time was different. This time I wasn't arriving as the family disappointment. I was arriving because Grandma had asked for help. The officers approached the front door. I followed. One of them knocked firmly. A few seconds later, my father opened the door. The moment he saw me, his expression darkened. "Emma?" Then he noticed the officers. His confidence immediately faltered. "What is this?" The lead officer remained calm. "We need to speak with Mrs. Evelyn Carter." My father's face tightened. "She isn't feeling well. We still need to speak with her." By then, my mother had appeared behind him. The second she saw the officers, panic flashed across her face. Only for a second. But I saw it. And so did the officers. "We can handle this ourselves," she said quickly. "No," I replied. "Clearly you can't." For the first time in years, both of my parents looked genuinely surprised by my voice. Not quiet. Not apologetic. Not defeated. Firm. Confident. The officer stepped inside. "Please bring Mrs. Carter here." My parents exchanged a look. A long one. That told me everything. Finally, my father moved aside. A few moments later, Grandma entered the room. The instant I saw her, my heart broke. She looked tired, much more tired than the last time I had seen her. But when our eyes met, she smiled. And I knew. The codes had been real. Every single one. "Hi, Em," she said softly. "Hi, Grandma." One officer gently asked if she was comfortable speaking privately. "Very comfortable," Grandma replied. Then she pointed directly at me. "I want her here." The next 30 minutes changed everything. Questions were asked, documents were reviewed, statements were compared, and little by little, the truth emerged. Over the previous year, my parents and Tyler had been pressuring Grandma to transfer control of certain assets and financial accounts. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic, just constant pressure, repeated requests, manipulation disguised as concern. Every time Grandma resisted, they pushed harder. When she attempted to contact her attorney, conversations were interrupted. When she tried making independent decisions, arguments followed. Eventually, she realized something frightening. Nobody was listening to what she wanted. They were only interested in what they wanted. That was when she sent the code. The room became very quiet. Tyler arrived halfway through the discussion. The confident smile he walked in with disappeared almost immediately. "What is going on?" Nobody answered. One officer simply handed him a document. As he read it, the color drained from his face. For years, Tyler had enjoyed being the favorite, the successful one, the important one. Now, everyone was looking at him very differently. My father sat silently at the dining table. My mother looked close to tears. Grandma remained surprisingly calm. Then the officer turned toward me. "Miss Carter, your grandmother mentioned that you were the first person she trusted to contact." My parents looked at me, confused. "Why?" my father asked. Grandma answered before I could. "Because she actually solves problems." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Nobody spoke. For 15 years, my parents had convinced themselves I was useless. Now they were discovering how wrong they had been. My mother stared at me. "What exactly do you do?" I almost laughed. For years they had never cared enough to ask sincerely. Now they wanted answers. "I work in investigations and risk analysis," I said. "I help identify problems before they become disasters." The silence that followed was almost painful. Suddenly, dozens of things made sense to them. The travel, the secrecy, the unusual schedule, everything. My father lowered his eyes. For the first time in my life, he looked embarrassed. "Emma," he said quietly, "I think we misjudged you." I looked at him for several seconds. Then I nodded. Yes. There was no anger in my voice, just truth. Grandma reached for my hand. "You were never the failure," she said. "You were simply the only one who didn't need everyone else's approval." Tears filled my mother's eyes. Tyler couldn't even look at me. But strangely, I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. The investigation would continue. Professionals would determine the proper legal and financial protections for Grandma moving forward. That part was no longer my responsibility. What mattered was that she was safe. That evening, after everyone had left, Grandma and I sat together on her porch, just like we had years ago. The sun was setting. The air was cool. "You came," she said. "You knew I would." She smiled. "I always knew you would." For 15 years, my parents called me useless. For 15 years, they saw only what they wanted to see. But in the end, I didn't need to prove them wrong. The truth did that for me. And as I sat beside the one person who had believed in me all along, I realized something important. Respect earned through honesty lasts far longer than approval gained through pretending. For the first time in a very long time, I felt completely free.